So first of all, I want to introduce my colleague and me. So Joe, who's in the corner where he's normally belonging to. Joe is my colleague and in the developer network at Mozilla, and apparently we were asked to put a few things together, what we are. So Joe is an athlete, so he can kick your ass if you're doing some wrong things or saying that you use Chrome mostly. He's also a speaker, and he's got this interesting slides as well. He's a coach, so he coaches a football team or girls' football team or something like that. He's also a dad, so to make sure that his football team has enough people in it. Apparently this is how he shows himself as a geek, which is interesting too. And he's an animal lover, so it has a puppy in it, so that's always how you win people over. You can get him on Twitter as Misfit Geek or at joestagner@mozilla.com. And he's been coming from Mozilla from a very, very large corporation that is actually part of my life that I don't want to repeat anymore. But now he saw the light and he's now doing open source stuff, so it's really interesting. I was at Yahoo before I went to Mozilla, and it was quite cool to see that now I can actually release all the code that I'm writing without asking people. It's wonderful. So I myself, I'm a trainer, accredited trainer in the UK actually. I'm apparently an influencer as well, that's what a lot of people said. So this is me giving Molly the idea of vendor prefixes in CSS. I'm also a geek, but I actually committed to being a geek rather than just wearing a shirt. I'm a good sport, so sometimes if people want to braid my hair, I can't stop it. I'm a Londoner. I live in England. I'm German actually originally, but London is my hometown for the last 12 years. And I'm obviously a ginger, and you should keep me out of direct sunlight. That's why I normally suffer when I'm in Spain, because I get red, I blister, and then I get white again, which is not fun. But what can you do? So let's have a disclaimer. So you will hear about a lot of cool stuff in the next hour, and we will make short and opinionated statements, and we promise no marketing talk, because we don't get money for our stuff. Why should I try to sell it to you? You will be expected to rethink some of the ideas that you have of the web and the technologies. And the things mentioned here, I wrote these slides 20 minutes ago, so probably half the stuff is missing, is based on questions that I had on my booth here. And I never been to the Mobile World Congress before, and it just totally and utterly shocked me when people came up like, well, does HTML have local storage? And I'm like, yeah, for 6 years now. And oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, obviously. It's just a shame that these things are like, I could never touch HTML because it doesn't do that. And a lot of stuff you will learn today that it does do. There's a chance of kittens and puppies. That always happens in my presentations. So, let's talk about mobile developers versus web developers. As a mobile developer, and you see why the Spanish thing came in here, you expect IDEs, SDKs, you expect to build things, and you see build scripts that run things, and everything that works. You expect the hardware provider or the software provider to give you things inside that you can use and build your systems with. You actually build with abstraction on abstraction on abstraction. None of you actually write hardcore assembly code for the mobile phone itself, but you actually write Java or C# or C++ or whatever other languages that you do that actually build something for you. Most of the time it's libraries that have interfaces instead of just doing it by hand. You know your environment. You know what you're building for. Okay, you got millions of different handsets, but you still know it's going to be Android, or it's going to be iOS, or it's going to be Windows Mobile. And you're all happy about your mature, well-formed OO languages and concepts. So you can be a developer that only is for one platform and does only one thing. Now, as a web developer, you actually have to be much more flexible. Basically, like Mortadelo is as well. You change all the time. There's new browsers coming out. There's new operating systems coming out. All of a sudden, we have tablets. We have phones. And what do we do now? So everything we do on the web is flexible. And you have to be flexible as a developer in your knowledge as well to do that. So you have no idea what the browser is that your end user uses. You have no idea what the operating system is. You have no idea what abilities the end user has. Is that person blind? Does that person understand French? Does that person have a screen that actually works or is it jittery? Is the connectivity really, really bad? Are they at a conference and the wireless goes down? These kind of things. So as a web developer, you always plan for that. We're totally paranoid about our end users, And it's painful to me to see arrogance with some people when they say, well, I only build for the latest browsers, and if people don't have them, well, they should download them, shouldn't they? Nobody does that in a real shop out there. They're like, no, you're not big enough, sorry, I can't sell you t-shirts. They're like, oh, we have them in different sizes, you can have one of those as well. There's no build processes. It's like, yeah, let's just hack around and do something and hope it doesn't break. We know more about browser bugs than browser vendors. Like, it's amazing how many bug reports we get from people out there that make Firefox better because they play with our stuff and they implement it and they get stuck implementing it. I think my favorite bug report was when we came up with private browsing mode, that somebody said that the keyboard shortcut to go into private browsing mode takes 2 hands and it should be 1. I just leave that there. And that was quite interesting. We fixed that bug, so that's okay. And all we have is HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And I had that since 1996, well, JavaScript since 1999, and I did well with it. I built things like Yahoo Maps with it, and all these technologies were already good, but now they're absolutely awesome. And you should be using them, and you should not be scared of them. So what is this HTML5 thing? It's incredible how in the last 2 years actually, HTML5 became this buzzword. You could go around some of the booths here and people will tell you probably something. We do HTML5 ads, whatever that means. And the problem with HTML5 is that so many companies are happy about saying now we're HTML5, we're not Flash anymore. We're actually much better now, we're open, use it like that we actually have an HTML2.0 going on. So there's like the Web 2.0 rush that we had a few years ago, like, yeah, we do Web 2.0, we do HTML5. And a lot of it is like shiny stuff that nobody needs. A lot of time people rebuild what we've done badly in Flash in 1997, now in HTML5, but only it takes more memory and is slower, so probably that's a good thing to do, right? So rotating cubes and transitions and like interactive music videos, great, this pushes the technology, but it's not HTML5 on the core of it. It's just playing with the technology and putting things in there. So HTML5 is not about the shiny. It's not about rainbow vomiting unicorns. And you should not actually look at like what cool things can I do in HTML5, but actually how does HTML5 allow me to write an application and actually reuse it across the different platforms, reuse it across the web. With HTML5, I can write an application, use something like PhoneGap or Appcelerator Titanium to render out native code for Android, native code for iOS, and all the other environments out there. And I maintain it in a simple technology, and I don't have to write. You can't convert an Android app easy to an iOS app, but you can do that with HTML5 and going through something like PhoneGap. So I got lots and lots of pointless statements about HTML5 in the past, and you're still getting them. So one of them is like HTML5 brings you more users as it allows for rich interfaces. Like an ad salesperson told me that once. So I could do HTML5 ads, they're interactive. You're like, well, they were interactive in Java applets in 1998, and that was a stupid idea. They were interactive in Flash later on, and that was beautiful, but in the end, nobody wanted to wait 40 minutes for that banner to load just because you have some washing powder to sell or something like that. So it will not give you more users because it's more interactive. It will give you a better experience for your users because it's more interactive. HTML5 is not ready yet. But you know what? HTML5 will never be ready. It's an evolution. HTML, JavaScript, and CSS were never ready. There was no cut-off point where we said, like, now you can use it. Now it's perfect. There's never going to be any change anymore. When I started web development, table layouts were the best thing to do because all the browsers only rendered with table layouts. Later on, CSS came around, and table layouts were a stupid idea. All my best practices that I said in 1998 basically made me look like an idiot a few years later. But that's good, because it's an evolution, and you should be part of that. HTML is not as smooth as the native experience. Yes, a Formula 1 car is faster than a hovercraft, but a hovercraft is much better on the water than the Formula 1 car is. So a native experience is written for one environment, one known environment in one known language. A web application is written for lots and lots of browsers on lots and lots of different devices and lots of things that users can do to break your application. I mean, I can resize this thing any way I want to. So hey, here's your layout completely shot if you're actually sending on one pixel perfect thing. The web is all about flexibility and doing things that the user needs rather than like forcing them into one environment. There are no professional HTML5 IDE and SDKs. That's one thing that I hear a lot, like, what editor should I use to write HTML? Well, I use TextMate, I use VI, I use TextPad Plus if I ever be unfortunate enough to have to use Windows. But that's all I need, that's all I write. I start my HTML document with a little shortcut that I've written myself, tap, and I got my HTML outline with the CSS that I need to have and the script block there where I start writing my JavaScript. This is what you can do. You don't need an IDE, you don't need a built environment, you don't need to download 4 gig of IDE before you start writing your first line of code. You can go to the command line and start VI and you're done. Probably the most stupid thing out there that was very, very excitable for the press was HTML5 is the Flash killer. Yes, Flash is not necessary for a lot of things now anymore, and I'm showing a few of them out there. But Flash has a good use in the market. Some things you can only do in Flash, and a lot of what the Flash community has learned over the years, we have to relearn now in HTML5. So saying like we kill Flash is the same as saying like we kill Windows. It's not going to happen anytime soon. So, and I think it's just unfair to a technology to say like it's dead because some tablet doesn't use it. So I like Flash developers that actually are really good JavaScript developers and share their information. I don't like Flash developers that think they can build things from 2007 and redo that all the time right now. But you find them everywhere. So it's not the Flash killer, it's not the Flash replacement. It is a native way of doing multimedia effects and things that Flash has done in the past. Some things are not possible yet in HTML5 because they're so ingrained in what you want to do with Flash that it doesn't make sense to do them in another technology. So let's not give them too much of a time. So here's the naked truth about HTML5. It's the evolution of HTML. When I started writing HTML, it was documents with blue things that you clicked on and went to other documents. That's all you had. Later on you got tables and you got images and things got exciting because you can make animated rainbow dividers and these kind of things. We left the document-driven web of linked documents and went into the world of applications. Applications that need more than one technology to run smoothly. Anybody telling you they use only HTML5 is a liar because you need to use CSS, you need to use JavaScript to make a really good web application out of it. It's always a connection of different open standards working together to build an application out of it. And the power of the web is that a good web app and website will not look the same across all the platforms. It fascinates me how people think it's a good idea if something looks the same on a newest Chrome and an Internet Explorer 6. A good website finds the capabilities of the product that it's running on, of the operating system, of the browser, of the device, and uses it when it's available. And there's one technique that you could take out here, if you take anything out, it's an if statement. Check if something is supported before you put it in there. There's nothing more annoying than a button that doesn't do anything when you click on it. We should not frustrate our end users, we should give them a great experience. And an if statement is a powerful thing for that. You can test for everything in JavaScript and before you apply it. And if you don't do that, you're arrogant and you will lose users. It would limit the potential of the usefulness if you just say it's one thing. And if there's more screen space, use it. If there's less screen space, give people the most important thing first, not your advertisements and these kind of things. I get very frustrated when I get a great game on my Android phone and then I open it on the tablet and the same game is just blown up and it's blurry and it's ugly and you're like, why didn't you use that space somehow? And in HTML can easily do that. And recycling makes sense. A lot of people are like, oh, we need new stuff, that HTML stuff, that web stuff is old. Disney is a very, very successful company, right? They make a lot of money. If you look at some of the old movies that they have these dance sequences in them. And they're actually the same in every movie. They just put different characters on top of them. Because animating is really, really expensive in those days. It was all on transparencies and you shifted things around. And they used the same movements, they used the same animation, they used the same facial expressions even in different movies. And nobody found that out. Nobody saw and went up to Disney, hey, you're cheating, you're reusing your old stuff, and they don't, because they just built a message around it that made total sense. Another thing about Disney, every Disney character has 4 fingers. You think they have 5 because our brain says like, yeah, they should have 5 fingers. But 4 fingers meant that actually every designer that they did, every painter, used about 4 hours less for a 15-second animation. And nobody cares, nobody finds out, they just look at a good animation. So sometimes you can cheat when you don't have the cool technology, but it makes sense to still show them. But this is wonderful. So let's go through the stack. Let me, as the web developer, show you some of the technologies that you have in HTML5, and all of them are available on the Mozilla Developer Network as documentation that is open. So if you are annoyed with anything that you find in the Mozilla Developer Network and you think it should have this information in there, don't send me a tweet or an email, click the edit button and put the information in there. That's how simple it is. We trust you. We look at things and, yeah, don't put porn sites in there or something like that. We will find out and come and haunt you. But we need you to help us with that. It's all open information. So HTML5 is done by 2 people. The W3C, or the boss here, defines the standard that actually you will need if you need to do government websites or people that love tick boxes and say, like, which standards did you do? So W3C is the mature, standards-based HTML5 stuff that you can use and works across all the browsers definitely out there. The WhatWG is actually where things are much more of an experiment. There where the information comes in. Here things explode. Here things are dirty. We throw things at each other, we shout at each other, we implement things differently across browsers. There's a lot of experimentation and like fire and flame going on, but there's also the cool shit happening, the good stuff that is not in the W3C yet. I always say, like, that's like the kindergarten outside where we eat our cakes or our sand cakes and throw stuff at each other and shout a lot and run around and scream and get very excited about things. And W3C is like the teachers then saying, like, okay, they want to learn that, let's make it then a real standard for that. So they call it Living HTML standard, which means HTML5 is in the WhatWG is just HTML. There's no 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's the scariest thing I can say to any architect out there. Like, what standard do you use? Oh, the one that changes constantly. But this is actually the only way you can innovate in a market like the web that is as big as fast as the web. We just started putting together a page called Learning HTML. So if you go to developer.mozilla.org, Learn HTML, you get all the information and the demos out there in one space that goes through the documentation instead of having to find it yourself. So that's pretty sweet that we have that right now. So first thing in HTML is the most boring thing to all of you who are from mobile developers, which is the semantics and the markup. Like every time I found a Java developer touch HTML, I was actually either got a table layout or I got 500 divs and spans with random IDs and classes on them. But HTML means that you're actually structuring a document. You're giving content structure and meaning. And a lot of people don't want to do that, and my advice is don't do it then. Find somebody who really cares about it and let them do it. It's much better than assuming a lot of things and like, yeah, that's fine, it works on my browser, right? And everybody will be out there. Semantics and markup are very, very important for a lot of people out there, and especially for accessibility. If somebody is a blind user and he listens to websites and you don't have any headings in your page, they cannot jump through the document quickly. They have to listen to your whole document before they actually get the information. And that's not nice, because you have to listen to a lot of waffle that you actually don't want to hear about. We have forms with richer widgets and inbuilt validation. That's something that people are like, yeah, whatever, but it's actually quite powerful if you think about it. Like you have a form, let's quickly write one. Let's say, okay, my form, HTML. I get my form. I make the first name here. All I have to do is put a required attribute in there. And if I open that now, and I don't have anything in there, and I try to go away from it, you see it's already red. The browser validates for me and says, like, that's not a form that's valid, so it will never go to your server. You don't have to write a JavaScript that validates that. When you try to submit it, the browser tells you that you should please fill out this field. This was the JavaScript that I wrote for every application out there over and over and over again, and now it's in the browser, and I don't have to do that. It actually works across all the browsers that you have, like, say, we want to try the Canary. Same thing here, I delete the Mickey out there. They don't do the highlighting immediately, but when you submit the form, it says please fill out this field. It's a simple thing, but it costs you no time to do that, and it means you don't have to do validation on the client and on the server. On the server, you always have to do validation, because you can't trust JavaScript as a security measure anyways, but this one saves you from having to write another extra validation. I see this is riveting for you, and you've never seen anything as beautiful like that before. So other things we have is like color pickers, sliders, date pickers. Whoever came up with time and date hated programmers, because having to validate a date across different localizations and things like that is not fun at all. I mean, yesterday we had a silly day that shouldn't be in the year, but it is there. I always wonder what happens to people that are born on 29th of February. Are they like 70 years old? In reality, they're like 20, or I don't know what's going on there. Or the passport, what's working there? Okay, I digress. Media, that was the big thing when HTML5 came out. Video and audio is exactly like anything else in your page. It's an HTML element. You can style it, you can change it, you can access it, you can put things on top of it, you can rotate it, you can do all kind of stuff with it. And I, for example, I'm a fan of Star Wars and Star Trek as well, but I always thought this is cheating. You know, in the first Star Wars, when he's on Tatooine and he wanted to show like, oh, this is not on Earth, this is another planet, so we give you 2 suns, right? So you obviously see this is not the Earth. So I thought I'd do something that he does to his own movies right now and help you to remix it. So he goes out and he basically stares into the sun, and I'm like, you know what, fuck off. We don't need that second sun. And the way that's done is just basically I overlaid an image over the video, and I actually put this image in there and I move it around with my mouse. And this one is an image as well. So actually, if I inspect this element, you will see there's an image called mask that has a background that actually is just overlaid over the image. And you can do all these things with videos right now. In the past, it was a Flash movie and I had no access. And basically, good luck putting something over in Internet Explorer 6. That was always good fun, putting an iframe in there. Nowadays, it's just another page element. You can do whatever you want. And it's incredible how many things you can do. I wrote this rotating video player as well, that you could zoom into a video and rotate it. And all I had to do was a few CSS transformations and some JavaScript. Now Canvas is really interesting, because Canvas is 2 things. It's a low-level drawing API in the browser. So I could draw lines, dots, circles, put text in there, rotate that. But it's more than that. A lot of people think it's just like a very simple plotting API, but it has a dynamic coordinate system. What that means, I can paint something, and then I can actually make a copy of it and rotate it and zoom it and make it smaller and bigger and shift it somewhere else on the screen without having to recalculate all the corners. All I do is actually move the canvas under it and move that around. So one thing I've done with that is, for example, the browser fountain. So this one is, these images are plotted onto a canvas and rotated, and actually the blurring of them as well works by wiping the canvas, but not wiping it, but just putting a black screen over it with a bit of transparency. So when you click on this, you get much more of those, and you can see the performance of Canvas is actually pretty impressive. And you can actually set how many logos you want. These are 350 now. Let's bump it up to 500 and see what's going on. You can turn the gravity much smaller so they actually fly much higher. You can put a drag in there that makes them much slower, so it's like really, really slow. And you can actually move the horizontal thing as well, like it's moving to the side here more. You will realize that the Internet Explorer ones are a bit slower than the others. I don't know why that is. But it's quite fun to actually see that kind of stuff, and you can put the other images in there as well. So Canvas is great for making games and doing all kind of things in there. This is coming out next week, the new Smashing book, and one of my chapters in there shows you actually how to use Canvas as an input device. Because right now we just plot things on Canvas and we do things with it. So this is HTML5 as well. That would work on the mobile phone as well. And what I can do with this, I can actually go to my desktop or go to my images out there and take any of the image. Well, this is a stupid one. Take the drag an image into my browser and actually create the thumbnail on the fly. So no server involved, everything happening in the browser using Canvas. Because in Canvas, I can access any video data or any image data on a byte level, and I can go through every single byte of the image, find out the color, find out the opacity, and change that accordingly. So I can do sepia filters. I can do all kind of stuff with it. And you can do that with as many images as you want. So you basically say, let's have 5 images here, and also get a GIF image, drag them in here, and it creates 5 of those thumbnails for me, and I can save them in the browser. So instead of having an upload button and a script on the server that generates the thumbnails for you, you can generate the thumbnails on the fly and upload those, which is much smaller and much faster. The more you can actually put into the client, the better. And if you look at the source code of that, it actually falls back to a normal upload form. That, like, if the browser does not support Canvas, you still get your form and you can do a server-side solution instead. So Canvas is an output device, but it's actually also a way of manipulating video and audio out there. Like you have the green one, for example, here. This is really old. This came out with Firefox 3.5. And we have this video of Tristan Ito from Mozilla here, and he has these green pixels in the background. And when you play the video, you can actually put the Firefox logo behind him. So we got a green screen effect live in the browser using HTML, Canvas, and JavaScript. Because all he does, he gets the video, he gets the image of the video every single time there's a new image. The browser does that automatically for you, and he loops through all the pixels and realizes which ones are green and replaces them with the picture behind them. And that's in the browser now, live working out for you. And there's a whole effect library being released right now by somebody who by somebody who's playing with that as well. The next thing we're talking about here is visuals and interactions. And a lot of people sell you that as HTML. It's not. Everything that we do nowadays that is visual, that is available to you and that you can see is actually CSS. CSS transitions, CSS transformations, CSS animation, rounded corners, gradients, generated images, drop shadows, 3D transforms. The thing about that one is a lot of that came from Apple, and the point was that the iPad and the iPhone were just not fast enough to do JavaScript animation. So we put all of that into CSS, so all this can be hardware accelerated on those devices. And it's great, because as a JavaScript developer, I'm normally not the most creative person and the most beautiful designer out there. So the people that write CSS should get all these benefits that you have to actually play in the browser with it. And what you see at the beginning, this cube here of our photos, none of that is JavaScript. This is just CSS of me assigning a class to the element and shifting these things around. And actually I can show that here as well. All these animations are just in the CSS. So I've got kittens here, say 1, 2, flip them around from one kitten to another. I can have a left effect that just moves the kittens from one to the other. I've got a top effect where I can just move the kittens down. I can shrink them. And all of that in HTML, none of that uses any HTML, any JavaScript at all. This is just CSS. So if you look at the source code of that and you look at the CSS, you find that I have transitions in there. All you have to do is define a 1-second transition for all the browsers. And that one will go smoothly from one effect to the other without you having to recalculate the positions, without you having to know where they currently are. And it's just beautiful that you can do these things rather simply nowadays. You then have the transformations like scaling. This is the one that scales in and out. You can rotate things. You can rotate things in different degrees around the different axes. And all of that is possible on all the browsers that we have right now. Sadly enough, you have to repeat it for all the browsers at the moment, because not all of them support the one without the prefixes. But it's still an incredibly powerful thing. For example, what you can do is like, this one here just moves that thing to the mouse where I click it. And all I had to do in JavaScript is find out where the mouse is currently clicking and set one transition on it. So the whole JavaScript and HTML of that one is, I have this WebKit transition, MOS transition, O transition here. And in the JavaScript, which I can't read right now again, damn it, I just find out where the page has been clicked. So I have a transformation on that one to shift it around. But this is all you have to do to have a smooth movement like that nowadays. In the past, I had to simulate it with JavaScript. I had to actually write my own waiting routines, my own easing routines, and they're all now in the browser directly in CSS for us. So 3D transformation is something that people get very, very excited about. And everybody says it's only Chrome, it's only Safari. Not so. Firefox had it now for 3 versions, and it's working quite fine. One thing that I've written is the 3D CSS Tester, in case you don't want to write it yourself. So this is a little application that has two images here and rotates them around the 3 axes that you have in CSS. So you got the y-axis, you got the x-axis, and you got the z-axis going into the depth. So what you do in CSS, you just define a perspective. In this case of 800 pixels. If I go 200 pixels, it goes completely out. That's not good. So you always want to do something between 800 and 1000. So that puts a cube in your page that you can position things inside. And then you have the different axes that you can rotate things around. So this one now does X, Y, and you can rotate it around the Z as well, and turn that off and just rotate it around the ones that I want to see. So the Z is the one that goes into the screen, the X is the one that actually goes up and down, and the Y is the one that actually goes sideways. I can not have animation. I can just say I want my cube coordinates, like I move the cube around as well. Or I can move the front logo and the back logo around and rotate it around the different axes. So I say I want to have 40 degrees here on that one, and I want to have a minus 40 degrees on that one. And then you actually have a rotation that looks much different because the images are not now behind each other anymore. So for me as a developer, it was hard to get my head around the 3D space. And every time something like that happens, I write myself a little editor like that. And that's the power of HTML, because that took me an hour to do. And I'm an okay developer, but I'm not amazing. And you can do that stuff as well. If you don't want to do anything right now, then actually you can press the Create Full Page button here, and you can take that animation and copy and paste it out and start playing with it in your own editor. So this one is all the HTML and CSS code that you need for the thing that I just showed. So you can paste that in, save it up, and run it in your browser, and it's actually supporting it on all the different browsers that have CSS transformation support. Cool? Cool. Let's not save it. I'm really annoyed by my presentation here because this is not good. Can't even see my... what? Cool, let's go back. So, a lot of the stuff that in the past we had to do with images, like drop shadows, rounded corners, gradients, can now be done in CSS. And that is really cool for a mobile environment because your end users don't have to download those images. They're already done in the browser for them because you want to throw them away later on. So these rounded corners here, for example, I could easily get rid of them if I just start inspecting the element and changing it out there. So again, let's go down there, see the style. And I have my rounded corners defined on the element above it, so I have to go in my navigation to the header instead. Good slide. I got my rounded corner here, which is border radius, and if I now want to have a more rounded corner, I can do 30 pixels. I can move that around, apply it, and all of a sudden my corner is much more rounded than that. No new image, nothing to load. The browser does it for me. I can even edit it here in the browser, and once I've done my edits, I could actually save them. So let's go back from that. Cool. Now, one thing that people came up to me constantly this conference, like, yeah, how do you do storage? How do my HTML5 apps, how do I always have to load them? And this is several things are happening there. We have local storage, which is a simple key value store, which just means navigator, local storage, set this to that. You've got 5 megabyte in that, but the performance is really bad because it loads it every single time. The page loads. It actually is not a good idea. A faster way of doing it and a better way of doing local storage to allow your users to store things offline in the HTML is IndexedDB or WebSQL. IndexedDB is supported by Chrome, by Firefox, and Opera, I think. And WebSQL is Internet Explorer and the others. The problem with WebSQL that I see is that under the hood it's actually a simple, SQLite. And SQLite has one problem. If actually it thinks that one of your entries is corrupted, it just deletes the whole database without asking you. And that's, to me, not a good thing as a web developer. I want to have a database that actually has different entries that work out simpler. So IndexedDB is a SQL database that already has indexed entries for faster reading and writing. So you ask for storage in IndexedDB, and then the user gets asked if they want to allow storage in the page, and if you allow it, then they put it in a database. You have a total database running in the browser, client-side, without having to do anything on your server at all. So it's a wonderful way of getting things offline. So yes, HTML5 can be offline and can be stored locally. Offline storage is even easier. All you have to do is define a manifest file, and the manifest file will then allow you to put images, to put HTML, to put CSS into the offline storage. So if the browser is offline, your HTML application still runs and still works until the person goes online again. And that's something that always fascinates me about mobile devices, like Angry Birds Seasons. Downloaded it, played the whole of Angry Birds, awesome. Angry Birds Seasons, cool, new levels. And then I'm offline on the train in England, and I want to play the next level, and it says like you have to connect to the internet for that. Like I just downloaded 8 meg of game that I installed on my Android machine, and I have to download every single level by myself. So that's something that was just sloppily done, I think. And I talked to Rovio guys, and they said like, yeah, we sell them anyways. And I think on the web it would be better. Angry Birds on the web, to me, would be a game that also has an editor. So I can write my own levels and send them to my friends and see how long it takes them to play them. I could play the pigs and you could play the birds, and we have to play against each other. So thinking about web applications in terms of mobile applications is like, use the web, you're online. You're actually talking to other people on the web, and you can use the technologies of the web to do that. So offline functionality is very simple to implement. History and bookmarking management. A lot of problems that web apps have is that they change something in the page, but they don't change the URL. So you reload the page and you go back to the index rather than like where you were, and you lost all the work that you've done in the last half hour. With the history API in HTML5, that's not a problem at all. And the best example for that is actually GitHub. If you go to GitHub and you go to any of the repositories, so let's take one of mine, and you navigate through the tree of the code, like the gallery that I showed you earlier with the kittens is here on GitHub as open source. And I just load different elements in here, and the main page doesn't reload. It's just the index HTML is shown right now, and the target gallery is shown right now. So you see it loads it with Ajax. But up there, it changes the URL. So if I send this to you now on Twitter, you would go to the same section that I'm in without me having to reload the page constantly. So the history API allows you to change the history of the browser and allow you to people hit the back button without having to reload the page. And Twitter is now finally implementing that as well, because in the past they had these hashbang URLs that always needed JavaScript to work, and when you put them in a browser without JavaScript or when it was filtered out, it didn't work at all. There was no point in reinventing something that is in modern browsers already. So the history API is there. Progress indicators, there's a new progress element that actually shows you're in 0.5 of 20 or you're in 0.3 of 20, which is something that we always had to do with CSS and style it. It's actually in there for you. And drag and drop. I showed you the drag and drop earlier from the desktop into the browser. That is possible. On a mobile phone, probably not a good idea. On a tablet, very much a good idea. Because you don't want users to have to select 20 files one after the other when they could select like them in their Finder and drag them over. In Chrome, in the Chrome file system, you even have a reader for directories, so I can put a folder into my browser and iterates over the files for me. That's something in the file system API that we're putting in now as well. So what if you want to break out of the web frame? That's the thing. It's like we're always in the browser, and we want to do things off the browser in HTML5 as well. And that was not in the original spec, but we thought it would be a good idea to do that. So you have desktop notifications. These are Chrome only, and we have a few as well, but we're still fixing a few security problems in that. You have file API access. You can actually simulate a file system, a Unix file system, in your browser. And there's on Chrome, there's something called filer.js, which is actually really, really cool. It's a Unix-like wrapper for the HTML file system API. So it's on GitHub as well, where you can have a full Unix-style file system simulated in the browser in memory for you, in case you want to do a massive content management system or something like that. So it's by Eric Biddleman. It's really, really nice to take a look at. And the menus that we have here is, for example, this context menu demo. And what it does, I can see now on my arrow here, that actually it shows a little icon that there is a menu available for you. So if I right-click this, I now get rotate, resize, and share, which I normally don't have on my on the normal browser. I have to simulate it in jQuery or in something like that. So I can now rotate that logo or unrotate it, and I can resize the logo and make it big again by right-clicking it, or I can share it on the web. And the way that's done is, let me quickly get out there. The way that's done, if you look at the source code, all I did was put a menu item in there. So I have a menu here called type context with an ID image menu, with an icon and a JavaScript call to rotate and to resize. And all of a sudden I have a real right-click menu in my application without having to simulate it in JavaScript. And that's supported in Firefox, and the support in Chrome is coming as well. Now, one of the last things before I have to make a bit of break and hand over to my colleague is Webgl. And Webgl is really, really awesome. It's also a bit confusing because Webgl is OpenGL for the web. So you have a full 3D environment. So this is somebody porting the Doom characters into a browser live. So you have the 3D environment here, and you can put the different skins on top of it, and you have cool 3D stuff basically in the browser right now and running in real time, and in this case it was like 35 frames per second, I think. So 3D gaming in the browser is possible with that. The issue with Webgl is that as web developer I stand there like, what the hell is that? I've never done anything like that. I don't know what's going on. But there's a few things in there for you as a web developer as well, because Webgl is basically, for game developers, you can now take your OpenGL skills and put them on the web without having to relearn a new 3D environment. There would be no point coming up with a new 3D standard for the web. We have these OpenGL things already. For web developers, we learned that the only way to get Webgl to perform fast enough was to use indexed arrays. So the JavaScript arrays, when you loop through them normally, can be very, very slow. Indexed arrays already have memory allocated to them, so you can actually get much faster through them. So any of your JavaScript that needs a lot of array manipulation or a lot of computation, actually now is possible for you to run on the GPU rather than the main CPU. Which means the fan doesn't start and the memory consumption is much less and your battery doesn't die as quickly on a mobile phone. So for any JavaScript, we can use things that Webgl gave us. And for everybody out there, it gives you a predictable, measurable performance that we can improve on. Like diff animation, JavaScript animation, CSS animation, all of these are different from device to device, from browser to browser. With Webgl, we can measure how fast the thing was and make it faster that way. So, for example, the scrolling that we have on some of our hardware-accelerated tablets are actually done with Webgl instead of others because it's much, much faster to do that. So, before I hand over, quickly, as one more thing. Okay, I'm not Steve Jobs. It doesn't work that way. It's when I go to a meeting with people that worked on a project for 8 months and I go in there and I tell them, you do that like I do right now, they don't call me a visionary, they call me other names, which most of the time are from body parts. But the thing that got me incredibly excited here, and probably you've seen as well, is actually that one here. And this one is actually, let me try to get that on the camera. Dun, dun, dun. This is Gecko. This is an operating system running on my mobile phone that looks like Android, looks like Windows 7, Windows 8, something like that. But what it is, and you can prove it by pressing it here, it's an HTML interface. The whole of Gecko is written in HTML5. And you got all the things that you want to have of a mobile phone. You got a telephone that you can call your friends with. You've got your address book where you can actually select your friends to call. And you have Webgl support as well, 60 frames per second, running on your mobile phone, 3D, GPU accelerated, full touch interface, all 10 finger support, because on a normal Firefox and Android we only get 2 fingers because Android blocks us out a bit. We're working on that as well.
Hey Christian,
yeah.
Can you prove to me that's HTML5?
No, I can't. Oh God, I hate this. Because I can prove it to you by showing you the source code, which I just did. Don't you hate that at conferences when you have a techie guy on stage and some sales guy standing next to him like, Jason, do you think our product can do that?
Jeez,
and just once I want to see...
Did he really just call me a sales guy?
Yeah. And once I want to see Jason stand up and say like, no, our product is really shit and doesn't do that. It's not going to happen, is it? You know, it's like it's such a predicament. Can you show me this is HTML5? Yes, I can. No, I could fake it. It could be a screen, but you can play with it later on as well. This is on GitHub. This is available to you. So the Gaia interface that is actually the interface of the browser itself is actually available for you as well. So Gaia, Mozilla's interface, on our blog. You can actually run that in your own browser right now and actually see the source code. It's completely open. You can download it from GitHub and build your own apps that look like the OS app in here. And what does that mean? It basically means that you can do web technologies. You can use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build mobile phone applications with full access to the telephone, full access to the vibration API, full access to notifications. The desktop notifications would show up in here, like they do on Android as well, with the technologies that you build a website with. It even means more if you're a company and you want to have a company phone that has your company logo here and 5 applications here. Try to go to Apple and ask them to build that for you. Not going to happen. Try to build it in Android. Good fun. You have to flash your own Android or do something to the core and write something yourself. You want to have that for your company on this phone. You get a web developer to build your website. You put it on there and you're done. So that is on sale in Spain at the end of the year with Telefonica. We're not going to make phones ourselves or sell them because we can't make money. But Telefonica has no problem with making money, so they partner with us and thought it's a good idea to make a phone that is rather quick, rather small. This boots in 4 seconds from 0. So if you take the battery out and you put it in 5 seconds, you've got a working phone. That's how lightweight the core is and how lightweight the infrastructure on there is. So in summary from me quickly, HTML5, go to Mozilla development.mozilla.com, find out about a few things there. HTML does all the things that Android gives you, not necessarily in the full-featured way that you know it, but you have it. You got geolocation, you got accelerometer, you know the angle of the phone that it is in right now, and you can go out to our booth to try that out. You've got native video, you've got native audio, you've got 3D animations, you've got CSS transitions, CSS transformations, and now we need people to build cool HTML apps to show those out there who think that you should pay as a developer to build things for them, that you don't have to. Because you can build a HTML5 app, you can put it on the page, you can make money with it without having to pay 30% to somebody who actually forces you to use their own hardware and your own software. And that to me is the really cool thing about the web. So one thing we have on this phone and we also have on the web is a market. So we will have you can write HTML5 applications and sell them there. And this is what my colleague is going to talk to you about quickly now. What we expect there and what we're going to go there.
He just told you. So, Kristen likes to pick on me about being a sales guy because the 10 years before I was at Mozilla, I was at a large company that was very focused on making money. I won't tell you who it was. I'll just say it started with micro. Kristen has a reputation for working with nonprofit organizations, so he's been at Mozilla for a number of years, which is a nonprofit organization on purpose. He's worked for some other organizations that were nonprofit by accident. But even Christian requires that we send him a paycheck every once in a while. So we think that the HTML ecosystem is a fantastic opportunity to let people develop apps for really broad distribution, whether or not you want to make money with those apps or whether you're just interested in the broadest possible coverage. So if you look at some of the numbers, the iPhone store has about 33 million users right now. The Android store has about 50 million users right now. Later this year, when our HTML5 application store opens up, on day one, through the Firefox browser, you'll have access to 450 million users. And that's just the start. So earlier this week, you heard we announced an arrangement with Telefonica. We're going to start shipping Boot-to-Gecko phones, which will come embedded with the Mozilla Marketplace. One of the really interesting things about that phone is that the one that Christian showed you, and he'll have it outside at the booth to be able to show you more detail, that's a Samsung Galaxy S2, but that's actually not the target device for Boot-to-Gecko. Because we've eliminated all that fat operating system in the middle, so there's just a little bit of Linux code under the covers that's just enough to bootstrap the device and to fire up some device drivers. But because we've created such a lightweight layer, we are targeting phones that are in the neighborhood of 600 megahertz, which means that we can target lower devices. And what did Telefonica say that their expected cost of the device later this year would be?
Under 100 euros.
Under 100 euros. So we actually think in emerging markets where folks don't have 500 to 700 euros to spend on a high-end phone, we actually think carriers will, once production has geared up and been paid for, we actually think that carriers will at some point start to be able to delivering phones to customers at close to $0. So every one of those phones will expand the marketplace for the HTML5 apps that you might build and submit into the marketplace. So if you'd like more information about the marketplace, just go to hacks.mozilla.org and you can see a detailed post with links to developer documentation as well as information about submitting your application to the Mozilla store. So the store now is open for developer app submission. The idea is we're going to have a few months of application submission so that when the consumer side opens, the store is populated with lots of great applications, and we expect that to happen later this year. Perfect. Cool. So let's just leave the rest of the time for any HTML5 questions that you might have, and Christian will have the Boot-to-Gecko device out at the booth if you'd like to have a closer look afterwards.
And there's a few more outside as well in our outside booth, which makes much more sense. I just want to show you a few ideas as well. I mean, if you want to play with some of the stuff that I said, all you have to do is to go to the webrocks.com and /demos. This is where I dump things. This is not pretty. This is where basically you find things that I'm working on when I got free time and do stuff like that. And it's just try a few of these things out and play with them. Like one of the things, for example, I don't even know what that is. Oh yeah, this is generated by that 3D tester that I showed you earlier. Okay, it's not. This is awful. Oh, come on, don't do that to me. Dun dun dun. Yeah. Just silly things that I just wanted to play with, like a smiley that would turn around and follow you for the thing. Showing I did this in a workshop where I explained people how to use Canvas. The poster circle, that was a demo that came out when WebKit supported 3D transformations and Firefox didn't, and we just wanted to show that Firefox does that now as well. The target gallery that I showed you, the thumbnail generator that I showed you, a touch test for devices, a photo rollover. This is pretty sweet. It's a little game that I've done that actually allows you to see what you know about HTML5. So you have to move the HTML5 shield around and catch things that are part of HTML. So in this case, Webgl is not part of HTML, and the geolocation is not part of HTML as well. And if you do, you actually get 20 points less. If you catch video, you get 20 points more, and so on and so forth. This one uses now the mouse. It's actually supported by the keyboard as well. And on a phone, it uses the orientation. I'm going to write this is on GitHub already. I'm going to write a massive blog post about it, explaining to you how it actually works and what it actually does. But the cool thing about that one is if you look at the source code, all the documentation, you write a documentation for your game, and you write the game with the documentation. So in this case, I've got the image here for the video, and I define the data type as good, so that's a good guy. you want to catch that one. And it means that on collision, the energy is 20 plus. The bad guys, on the other hand, on collision, the energy is actually negative. Like Flash is here minus 20, jQuery is not part of HTML, it's minus 20, and CSS is minus 20. So a lot of people see HTML as like something that's evil and needs to be done, but you can use the HTML as actually the thing that drives your application. Because people know how to edit HTML. They don't want to go to a JSON object or a collision file or something like that. You can do that from the HTML itself. And of course I could cheat now myself and say like do a plus 100 in there and then make the game much easier. But it's actually quite fun. So when you see the instructions here, this is where I explain what the game is about. And here is actually I show the components, and these images, which I needed to have in the game anyways, actually now define the sprites later on of the game. So I'm reusing things much like Disney did, but I made less money with it. The cube rollovers that I showed you, this is quite fun. This is a normal rollover in a browser that supports it. In a normal browser, it's just a rollover from one image to another. There was an article on .NET Magazine that explains to you what to do there. The Beanie Maker is quite cute as well, because on Blue Beanie Day every year we celebrate that web standards are awesome. And what I've done here is, like, if I go to the HT docs and the intro that we have here. No? The alphabet is sometimes hard to remember. Intro, there you go. And let's get the Joe as a geek. And drag him into the browser again. No upload necessary. You can drag him into the browser. He's now inside that canvas. I now have a beanie that I can put in there and say like, okay, that's far too big. So the beanie size should be much smaller. So in this case, make it 0.3 and put a beanie on him. Still a bit too small. Remove it, make it 0.2. Put a beanie on him. 0.25, almost there. Put a beanie on him. I can now right-click that, save that as an image, and I would have Joe with a beanie, all done in the browser without any server-side interaction whatsoever. Also on GitHub, also for you to play with. Could be part of a content management system to put your company logo in, for example. The double sun thing that I showed, the sun going out, the context menu is in there. The HTML5 3D CSS shows how the 3D transformations work. And in this case, it uses, we don't support the gradient yet, but in Chrome, you can actually use CD range input device, so you can actually rotate it with those. And that just showed how the 3D transformations work out, and then you can just start spinning it again around these different angles. What else do I have in there? A lot of stuff. But if you really want to go for cool stuff, there's the demo studio of Mozilla. And there we have demos that developers wrote and that we actually give out prizes for. So every month there's a new competition going on where people send demos in for us, and we play with them, and we have a group of judges that look at your demos and actually give you prizes for that. So every month we have a new Dev Derby here. In this case, it's touch events this month. Next month is CSS 3D transforms. So you saw the 3D CSS maker that I showed. You can start with that one to write your own 3D CSS transformation. First prize is an Android phone. Second prize is a backpack. Third prize is a t-shirt. Fourth prize is dinner with Joe. And just submit your demo. And unlike other demo studios that you have out there, a lot of people have their demos out there and you look at like, oh, this is amazing. All of us are actually coming with source code, so you can download it, you can play with them, you can actually start building on top of them. Okay, any questions about any of that? Come on, someone has a question. You all want to get out, it's too hot, isn't it? We're outside, we got two booths. We're outside here for another 15 minutes or so, but he'll be there for the rest of the afternoon, because I have to go into the big hall and lead a discussion group on HTML5. So if you want to see that, where I tell other people what they should be thinking about, like Steve Jobs would have done, that'll be me. So thanks very much for your attention.